Hi there, everyone. Welcome to an introductory course into music theory. My name is Blake Shepard, and we're going to be going over some of the foundational and introductory concepts in music theory to get you prepared for uh, more advanced musical analysis and composition theory. There's many things that music theory is useful for. To begin, this class is designed for anybody who might be looking to go into music school, might be interested in music theory. Um, for a background, I would recommend that you're someone that already plays an instrument, is familiar with uh, music, basic music theory. Um, Music theory that wasn't necessarily studied, but that you just picked up from playing music yourself. And we'll go over that in more detail. But first, let's hop over and have a brief look at a very short syllabus for this course. Here you'll find the syllabus. It's also in the Google Classroom that is in the description of this video. You're welcome to join that. In that classroom, I will post updates, material that might be helpful for studying, questions. I'll also post some quizzes that we'll talk about. So first of all, this is Introduction to Music Theory 1. This series is all online, free on YouTube. And this is being recorded in 2026. My name is Blake Shepard. So, a brief description of the course. I'll just read here. Introduction to Music Theory provides foundational study of Western tonal music. So, we're going to be looking at Western music specifically. There are many different types of music theory, but we're looking at the theory of Western tonal music specifically for this introduction class. We're going to focus on notation, scales, intervals, harmony, voice leading, and some very basic counterpoint for this class. Like I said, it's designed for beginners and also for people seeking some review and some fundamental concepts. In terms of any requisites for this class, of course there is none. This is an online lecture series. However, I would recommend that you have some background in the fundamental concepts of music, and I'm talking about the very fundamental concepts, i.e., what a note is, what the staff is, various things like that. Next, we have our text we're going to be using. It's called A Concise Introduction to Tonal Harmony. You can find this online. You can also buy it from the publisher. I posted a copy of it in the Google Classroom, and we'll be using this as a framework for our class, and it's highly recommended that you have a look at it. Evaluation. Once again, it's an online class. There's no evaluation that you're required to do. However, if you want to quiz yourself and you want to feel like you've completed something when you're finished this course, I've put here a small rubric for evaluation. So there will be 2 quizzes, and there will be a final kind of test that I will post. If you want to aim for a certain goal, I've put here that you should be able to get above 70 on each of the quizzes and the final assessment. So that's above 70 on each of the tests. Once again, completely not necessary. You won't get anything special for completing this. But if you want to feel like you've acquired enough of the knowledge to move on with the course, that's a pretty good goal to aim for. And then finally here, I just have a breakdown of the contents of the course. Starting with chapter 0, strangely, is how the book starts, on notation, pitch, and rhythm that we'll go through today. We'll see if we can get through all of it. Chapter 1, 2, 3. After that, I'll well, the quiz will be posted, but you can complete quiz 1. Then we'll do chapter 4, 5, 6, quiz 2, finish with chapter 7 and 8, and then we'll have our final assessment on all of the chapters combined together. So that is it for the syllabus. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. So let's head over to our textbook. All right, everyone, here we are in our textbook. This is once again the concise introduction to tonal harmony, and it's found in your Google Classroom or online. We're going to skip to page 23. That is 23 in the PDF and also 23 in the book. On chapter 0, which is the notation of pitch and rhythm. Now, these are very basic concepts. We're going to go through them fairly quickly, but I will stop on any of the slightly more complicated things. We're going to be looking at the staff, notating pitches, so the different clefs that we have here, semitones, whole tones, accidentals, and how we use them. Rhythmic durations, so your quarter note, half note, whole note, and the subdivisions of those. We'll also be talking about the dots, ties, and triplets. And we'll be talking about our very simple and compound meter, very basic metric divisions, and the anacrusis, which is quite basic as well. So to begin here, we have the staff. You might remember seeing a staff before. It is these lines that we read music on. Excuse my very bad drawing here, but you might have seen what we call clef on the staff, the beginning of the staff. And then you might see various notes written as these little dots, various places on the staff. They might have these little lines here that are called stems. We'll get to that. Some of them may be solid. You might also see ones that are hollow, like this. So, let's just reading here. Music is written on a 5-line staff. So see, we have 5 lines here, and this is called the staff. Anything that I'm circling or underlining here or is in bold, this is important vocabulary that you know the definitions of. This is written on a 5-line staff. Pitches are specific points on the continuum of audible sound. Now, this is kind of a bit complicated, but it's really quite simple. So pitches are simply the sound that you're hearing. So when I play a note on a keyboard or an instrument, it is the sound that you are hearing is what the pitch is. It is not a note, which we'll get to, but a pitch. Now, the pitches are represented by notes that are written on the lines and spaces of the staff. So these things here that we see, these various dots and circles with these lines, these are notes. So again, excuse my writing. These are the notes that occur on the staff. Each one of these notes corresponds to a pitch, which is a sound that is produced by our instruments. As notes are higher on the staff, higher the pitches ascend. So the higher we go on these lines, the higher the sound of the pitch we get. And other way, lower we go, pitches descend. So important things for us to have here are the staff, the pitches, and where they go higher and they go lower. Oh, yes, and also the notes are what's on the staff. Okay, let's continue down here, and this will become more obvious as we look at things. So here we have pitches that are notated. And notated here, this term you'll hear a lot. simply means written. So you could say pitches written on the lines and spaces of the staff. So here we have our note heads, which are these black things. These are the note heads, and they represent the pitches. So these are both the same note heads, as you can see. These are the same. However, the pitches are not the same. So pitches not the same. As we go higher, as we ascend here, these pitches are becoming higher. Higher again, see these two notes. This one occurs higher on the staff. It's on the line above this, so we're once again going higher. Over here, we start to go lower, and continue down. We're going lower down. So the pitches are ascending to here, and then once we get here, pitches start going down. So we see represented by these squiggly lines here. Here we see note heads, whether they're filled like these are filled note heads. They could also be open like these. They're written as circles or ovals. And it's important that they're neither too big nor too small. It's just when you're writing on your staff, make sure they're all fairly proportionate in size. Moving on, pitches that go above or below the staff, which is our 5 lines, so they go below or above 5 lines, they require what we call ledger lines. So if I want to write a note here, that's great. We have a space for it, that's perfect. If I want to write a note here, that's also great. It can go sit right on top of the line, no problem. However, what if I want to go higher than that? Well, we're going to need to add another line to our staff, just temporarily, and then we can add our note onto that. So you can see this line here is temporary. We don't have to continue it on forever. We don't need to do that. It's temporary. So just this little line here. And we can see some examples as we go down here. So these are some good examples of ledger lines above. So we can see if I could have, here's our staff with our 5 lines. And we need to go above our 5 lines. So we're adding this little small line which we can indicate this note on. And we call that the ledger line, as we see up here. So ledger line, temporary extension of the staff. That's a very important term to memorize here, ledger line. We'll learn how to use those very effectively very soon. So they can also, as well as going on the lines, they can sit above the lines, as we see here. And we can also have more than one line to extend above, as we see here. So these are all going up in pitch, as we discussed earlier. What if we want to go down in pitch, so below the staff? Here we do the exact same thing. So this note here, and kind of this note head, can dangle from the very lowest of our 5 staff lines. But if we want to go lower, we're going to need to add some ledger lines. So as you can see here, we have our ledger line. Already probably have seen that. But same rule applies here. We can hang from our ledger line. We can also have more than one. See 2 ledger lines here. 2 ledger lines. Now our book here indicates that these are good. These are good examples. Notes above the staff need ledger lines. These are both good examples of ledger lines above and below. Poor examples. For example, here we do not need a ledger line since this note is already sitting on top of a line. We do not need a line on top of it to hold it in place. Likewise here, we have our first ledger line. This first ledger line is right. That's a good ledger line to have, but this one on top of here is not a good ledger line to have, since it has the same problem as this. Likewise, you just invert it. We have our note hanging as we did below over here. This was good, but adding another line, that is just not necessary since it's already hanging from the staff. So this is no good. Here, similar to before, we have two ledger lines. These first two ledger lines are good. They are required for this note. However, the bottom ledger line that we're sitting on here is not required. It goes more than needed. So you see here, do not write more ledger lines than needed. So that is the spiel on ledger lines. Just take down some notes for that. This will be very important going forward. It's important that you understand this concept and can integrate it. So make sure to take these notes down. So as you can tell, I'm very new to this, and I just managed to lose some of my recordings, so we're going to go over this again. Before I start, I'm going to double check that we are in fact recording. That will help. So hope you got your notes down for our ledger lines. We're going to move on to our clefs now. So we're going to start with the treble clef. Clefs, as we talked about before, we'll be looking at these funky shapes here, along with an even funkier shape, like something like that. Maybe not like that, but these two are our principal clefs. First, we're going to start with this one, our treble clef. So I'm just going to read what the book has here. Musicians use letters A to G, so A to G, to identify notes on the white keys of the piano. So we see down here we have a piano. As a point of reference, the C in the middle of the piano is called, middle of the piano keyboard, is called middle C. So we'll identify that. A clef associates lines and spaces on staff with specific pitches. So our clef is going to tell us, okay, we see a note on a line. What pitch does that actually correspond to? What sound is that note going to produce? Treble clef, also called the G clef, assigns G above middle C. So that's the G above middle C. I'll circle this here. This is our G above middle C. To the second line of the staff. So, what is our treble clef? Well, this here that I will attempt to draw, is our treble clef. TC, treble clef. It is also called the G clef because if you squint your eyes, it kind of looks like a very fancy G. You have to squint quite hard for that. Why we associate this with G above middle C is since if you look there at the line that runs through the treble clef, through this intersection point here, we have a line that, let me just draw another one here. We have our intersection point and we have a line that runs through it. Well, this line, if you squint even harder here, runs through the kind of swirl of our G clef, and that is where we have our G. You can do this every time, or you can associate this clef here, our treble clef, with this G being on the second line of our staff. So G is always going to be, this is always going to be G when we're in our treble clef. Always. Another thing that we mentioned up here is our middle C. We have an arrow here pointing to our middle C. That is the C that is directly below the staff. It is the first ledger line. As you can see, we're using our ledger lines here. It's the first ledger line below the staff. So this is important to memorize. This is middle C and this is G. And we can use that to kind of pinpoint where the rest of the notes are on our scale. If we read above here, the treble clef associates particular lines on the staff with white keys on the keyboard. So each note head on staff here is associated with one of these white keys. So let's look at G here. G, we have this is G on the keyboard. If we go down one, well, below G, if you know your alphabet, is an F. So that means that the next note head down, which you'll see is not on the next line down, but in between, since we alternate between in between in the space and on the line. You'll see this going all the way up. So we have our G on the line, our A in a space, B on a line, C in a space. So we alternate going up as a quick aside. So as we go down, F goes to an E, we go down one key, this key is an E. And we continue that all the way down, 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 all the way till we get to an A. So we have G, F, E, D, C, B, and then we get down to A on the keyboard here. So it's a very linear descent down. As we said before, G-clef stylized G encircles the second line, as we talked about. As our pitches ascend, so we talked about descending from G, it is simply going down in the alphabet. As our pitches ascend, the letter names repeat every 8 notes. So if we go back to our G here that we've circled a lot of, notice we don't go to H, we actually wrap back around and start at A again, since musicians don't know how to count their alphabet. No, don't know how to say their alphabet above H, above G. See, I'm even getting messed up. So after G, we wrap back around to A, and then everything's back to normal, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, until we get to our G again, and we wrap back around to an A, B, C, D, E, and we keep going all the way up. So these that we've discussed here, these groups of A to G, A, this isn't completed, but you have F, G, A to G. These are called our octave, another very, very important term. So each octave contains 8 notes. We start at our A, and we go B, C, D, E, F, G, and we wrap back around to the A. So we have our 8 notes. We always double the one we start on. We're going to see that. If this is seeming a little bit complicated, this should hopefully clear it up here. So the book gives us this little circle here. So starting on any note in the circle, and including the starting point, move 8 notes in either direction. Takes you back to your starting point. So move 8 notes in either direction, back to your starting point. So let's just go in blue here. Let's start on C. So we're going to count our C. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And like I said up here, where we're looping back and counting our starting note again, we're going to count C again. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points on the circle here. And that is our octave. So in this case, our octave is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. We have the C twice because we're looping back around, and we have our 8 notes. Let's go the other way here in a brown color, and let's start on G instead. Start on G, we're going this way instead. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Counted C twice, ignore that. 1, 2, 3, 4. C is 5, B is 6, A is 7, and we count our G again for, once again, 8, and that's our octave. So that is the rundown for the treble clef. This is one of our clefs we use. Next we're going to go on to the bass clef. Hopefully a lot of this is kind of review for you. If not, see if you can look up some more explanation on the treble clef, or look for an introductory course into this kind of material. This should all be a little bit of review, especially in treble clef. Maybe moving on, things will get a little bit less familiar, but that's no worries. So on to the bass clef. All right, what does the book say about the bass clef? It says that the bass clef is also known as the F clef. So up here, we knew the treble clef as the G clef. We know the bass clef. This is how we write our bass clef. This kind of squiggle with two dots. We know this as our F clef. Kind of less resemblance here. They don't really look like each other, but nonetheless, it is our F clef. And instead of assigning the G as we did up here, it assigns F below middle C to the fourth line of the staff. Notes written in the bass clef are lower than in the treble clef. So the treble is above. If I can write a treble clef. Come on, Blake. That's our treble clef. Why not? No, I can do a better treble clef than that. Come on. It's difficult with a mouse. Here's our treble clef. So that's typically above. Here, we're going to have middle C, as discussed earlier. So this is middle C. And below, we have our bass clef. So let's just go back to the treble clef quickly. We see our middle C. Most of these notes, with the exception of these two, are above. They're going up and above our middle C. We'll see in our bass clef that that is not the case. So here we are with the same diagram. We have an arrow pointing at our clef. This is our bass clef, also known as F clef, even though it doesn't look like an F. The reason it's called our F clef is because of right here. This is our F, and this is assigned to the fourth line of our staff. This is an important point to remember when we're trying to figure out what the other notes of this clef are. This is a good starting point, our F. Now, our middle C. Now, why is our middle C all the way up here when in the treble clef it was all the way down here? Well, these are actually the same pitch. They are just written differently. Their note heads are written differently because of the different clefs. These clefs are different, not equal. So that is making our middle C appear in two different places. Now you'll notice that here it is still on a ledger line, and up here it was on a ledger line. These are important when we start talking about the grand staff, you'll see. But for now, this is our middle C in the bass clef. This is our F, our point of reference. These also all correspond to notes on the keyboard. As we go up, we get our G, A, B, and this continues up, and continuing down, we have our notes going down. Once again, we have our octave here, A to A, that repeats. We have another octave, C to C, that repeats. Very, very similar concept as our treble clef. As we see here, book says F clef is stylized F. Well, we'll leave that up for interpretation. Is centered on the fourth line. So you see the middle of these two dots are on either side of the fourth line, which is what our F is on. So similar to how we kind of circle around, goes through the point of our treble clef for the G, this goes between these two dots for the F. Once again, the more you look at these, you won't have to figure that out. You'll see, okay, this is on this line, that is simply an F. Now, moving on to the grand staff. This is a combination of both the treble and the bass clef. So we have two staves here. The plural of staff is staves. We have one stave, and we have two stave. They're both in different clefs. So it's a lot going on here, but we'll break it down. Treble clef, everything is the same as we discussed before. We have our middle C is on that one line below. Our G is still where it was before. Bass clef, our middle C is in the same place. And our F is also in the same place. But you'll notice here, ledger lines appear above the treble clef notes and below the bass clef notes. So these notes here are actually overlapping. So we see this note in the G, this G here in bass clef is equal to this note in the treble clef. It is just that this is written down with ledger lines and this is written on the staff, but these are the exact same pitch. Likewise, these A's are both the exact same pitch. So are these B's. And most notably, so are these C's. Both of these middle C's are the same pitch, same pitch. So as we discussed here, we have one ledger line above for the bass clef, one ledger line below for the treble clef. So neither middle C is on either of these staves. They are both using ledger lines. So that is, in terms of the grand staff here, we can see neither one of these are on a stave. They both use the ledger line. So our middle C is our kind of focal point, our transition between treble and bass clef. Reading what the book has to say here, grand staff consists of treble and bass staves joined together by vertical line. So yes, we'll usually have, okay, you have your treble there, you have your bass here, and they're usually connected by this little squiggly bracket connected by a vertical line or a brace. It's less important, but just know that they're connected with this little fancy bracket. Notes around middle C can be written in both treble and bass clef. Yes, so they have equivalents in both clefs. That goes above 2. We have notes that use ledger lines in the bass clef that don't use ledger lines in the treble clef. So they can be written in both treble and bass. And we already went over this. So that's a lot to take in. Just know, as a recap, clefs are how we decide where to put the notes on the staff to represent pitches. There are many different staffs, many different clefs for our staves to represent many different pitches. So our lower pitches are going to end up in our bass clef, and our higher pitches are going to end up in our treble clef. And that's simply just so we can represent them all on a grand staff here. Using both of these in 2 lines, we can represent almost any pitch that we want, from our lowest C all the way down here on the keyboard, all the way up to C, D, E, and even beyond that. So those are our main clefs. treble clef, and bass clef put together on a grand staff. All right, next we're going to throw something in that is even more complicated, our C clefs. There are several different types of C clefs, but we're going to be looking at what appears to be two of them here. But once you learn one of them, you can kind of apply the knowledge to the rest. So reading the book. In addition to our treble and our bass clefs that we just discussed, there are several clefs known as C clefs, and they show the placement of middle C on the staff. This is the most important thing to put a star next to. They show the placement of middle C. There's no guessing, it tells you. Of these, the most important are the alto clef with middle C on the third line and the tenor clef with middle C on the fourth line. Violus, which is that funky, let me draw a violin here. They have these little holes on the side, the strings. It's a bigger one than this. Violus, slightly bigger violin. Usually play in the alto clef, while cellus, bassoonus, trombonus, not always, but occasionally they'll play in the tenor clef when their music is too high to be notated in the bass clef. So a lot of underlining there, but the main things that you want to know are show the placement of middle C on the staff, and alto clef and the tenor clef. Those are our most important. All right, let's move down to this complicated jargon here. A C clef consists of two stylized Cs that converge on middle C. So if you want to call these, once again, Cs, they're kind of backwards Cs. You have a line and two backwards Cs, and they meet, and there's a line that goes here. And the line that goes between these two is middle C. So we have our middle C here, our arrow pointing to middle C. You can see that line is going directly through. And from middle C, we can determine, okay, one space above, that's going to give us our D. One space below, that's going to give us our B. And we can extrapolate our notes, our note names, from note names here, from the location of middle C. As a quick note, you will always, almost always, unless you are a violist or someone that encounters these often, you are almost always going to be looking at middle C and then counting. So knowing how to read this, knowing that these two funky shapes converge here on this line, and knowing that that line is middle C, that is going to be your best friend every time you come up with these. You should count out relative to middle C. Speaking of relative to middle C, you have the tenor clef, which looks exactly the same as this, except it's moved up slightly and in a weird position. So once again, we have our two lines, our two backward Cs that converge on a line. And if you look here, what line they converge on? Well, they converge on this one instead of the one that the alto clef converges on, which means that this is middle C this time. Once again, we extrapolate from knowing that middle C is on the fourth line of the staff here, or the second highest line. And we extrapolate that, okay, this is a C, above must be a D, below must be a B. And we can continue our pattern to get the notes of the scale and to read this clef. That's the most important thing at the moment for C clef. This is a clef that you'll be much less familiar with, and that's okay because it's much less used than the other clefs. All right, everyone. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to make it There's a lot of material left to cover in this chapter. However, I think we will definitely make it page 29 and finish our discussion of semitones. So, what is a semitone? What is a whole tone? So semitones, also known as half steps, and whole tones, also known as whole steps. These are interchangeable terms. So the book says, pitches on the keyboard are separated either by a semitone or a whole tone. Semitone is the smallest possible space between two notes. Any two adjacent keys on a piano keyboard comprise a semitone. There are 12 semitones in the octave that we've discussed before. 2 semitones make up a whole tone. So 2 semitones equals 1 whole tone. Among the white keys, E and F and B and C are the only semitones that are white keys only. All the other pairs are white keys. All the other pairs are white keys and black keys. So any of the other white keys are a whole tone apart. This is a bit more complicated than it needs to be. So let's dive into this a little bit more. I will personally be using the terms semitone and whole tone for the most part. I might slip in half step, whole step here and there, but semitone and whole tone is pretty standard. So let's look at this diagram here. Here we have our octave. So we have our notes. This is a C going up, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And these are the white keys. So C to C, that's our octave, our 8 white keys. And you can see that here. Now, within this octave, there are actually, as our diagram shows here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different keys, including the black keys. So including white and black keys, there's actually 12 notes in our octave. This is important. So there are 8 white keys, but there are 12 black and white keys in our octave. So if we read here, adjacent keys on the keyboard are a semitone apart. So any 2 keys that are directly next to each other are a semitone apart. Now, if we look at our keyboard here, you might think, okay, here's our D, here's our E. Well, these are directly next to each other. And you'd be right. They are 2 white keys that are directly next to each other. However, what about this black key here? Don't worry about what we're going to call it at the moment, but know that there is something in between here that we need to wrestle with. So these are in fact not a semitone apart. They are a whole tone apart because they're separated not by, well, basically because they're not a semitone. They're not separated by a semitone. They are a whole tone. We said there are 12 semitones in an octave. You can see the relations of these semitones here. So this key, if you can see my cursor here, this key and this key, well, these are a semitone apart. This key and this white key, that's a semitone to here, a semitone to here. Now, as the book says here, E and F and B and C. So here's E, here's F, here's B, and there's C. These are the only 2 white keys that are semitones. And that's because they don't have these black keys between. They are directly next to each other. As you can see, might be able to see from this diagram here. They are directly next to each other. All the other ones, all the other pairs are our whole tones. Now, how do we represent these black keys that are causing us a problem in our octave? Accidentals are used to raise and lower pitches by a semitone. A sharp sign, important term, sharp sign, just this little hashtag kind of shape, raises the pitch by one semitone, and a flat sign, another important point. This kind of B shape is lowering the pitch by one semitone. D flat, so we write that as our letter name D and a little flat sign up in the corner, for example, is a semitone below D. So if our D, we had a keyboard here. Let me just write quickly. Here's our keyboard. So here's our D. D flat is going to be a semitone lower. So semitone isn't this white key. Semitone, we're going to be going to the black key. So this here is our D flat. Let's get rid of that. And also we have, as an example here, F sharp. So we write that as an F, our F note, and a little sharp sign in the corner. This is a semitone above F. So if we go down here, we have our F, and we go one up. We're not going there. We're going up one to our black key here. So this in yellow here, that is our F sharp. Since we're sharpening, raising the F to the black key. Ooh, let's see here. Pitches may have more than one name, and they are called enharmonic equivalents. We'll look at that in a second. I can zoom in here. This is very handy. So we discussed this. So here we're showing the names of our black keys. And you'll see that they have different names. So this can actually be this is our C. Let's start in by writing these names in here. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So if we want to sharpen our C and raise this by a semitone, okay, we're going to go, and we know that we're going to go to this black note. And that's going to give us our C sharp. That's great. And we can do that same thing here, this F. If we want to sharpen that, we're going to go to our black note, and we're going to get our F with the little sharp sign. If we go to this B flat and we go to this B and we want to make it a B flat, well, we're going to go down. We're going to go down to the white key, and that's going to give us a B flat. But what if, say, I'm on this D here. I'm on this D, and I want to go down one. So I go down, and I go down to the black key, and I get my D flat. Well, what gives? Because we just did this with C, and this was known as C sharp. And now we're calling it D flat. This is what we call enharmonic equivalence. Here's our enharmonic equivalence. Sounds like a complicated term, very simple term. Simply means that we have one note, have two different names. So you can see an arrow here. This is both G sharp and A flat. Since we can go from our G, and we can sharpen it to be G sharp, and we can go from our A, and we can flatten it to be A flat. That is all that our enharmonic equivalence means. Now, that being said, it is a very important term. It will come up a lot. So make sure you have the definition of that well integrated. Black keys can take their letter names from the white keys, a semitone above and below. Yes, we just saw that. It can be A sharp or a B flat because it's in between A and B. It's in between. White keys may also have enharmonic equivalents. This is a bit more complicated. You'll encounter this less often, but let's just go over quickly an example here. So we've done this and we're comfortable with our enharmonic equivalents and our naming up here. But what if we're on a B? So we're chilling out on B and we want to make it flat. So we know how to do that. We go down to the black key and we get our B flat. But what happens if we want to sharpen our B? Do we go here? No, because then we're skipping over this black key. So that's not right. What we do when we sharpen B sharp is we go up to the white key. And you say, okay, well, this white key is C. That doesn't make much sense. What we can do is we can call B sharp C. These are actually also enharmonically equivalent. It doesn't have to be with black notes. So since we sharpen this B, becomes a B sharp, and the B sharp is just a C. We write it as a B sharp because we came from the B. We don't write it as a C, but we know that in reality, on the keyboard, it is in fact a C. Let's get another color. And we can see some examples here with the E and the F flat. So in F flat, this is our F. We go down, and we're going to get to E. So E and F flat are the same. Same with E sharp and F. And we have our example here, B sharp and C. These are all enharmonically equivalent. All right, let's read what the book has to say, and we'll be wrapping up very quickly here. So on the staff, accidentals are written before the note. Yes, very important. They're written before the note. You have a note, we have our accidental here. We do not want our accidental after the note. This is a no. This is a good. But when you say, okay, yes, when you say or write the name of a note, the accidental comes after the letter name. A little bit complicated, but you'll get used to it. So if we want to say, what this note here is, okay, so on our treble staff here, our treble clef, this is an F. We have our sharp sign for it. We don't say sharp F as it's written. Even though it's written, we have a sharp and an F. We do not say sharp F. We say F sharp. And when we write this down, we don't do this either. We don't do sharp F. That is a no. No, no. We say F and then the sharp sign. So it's written differently. These are not written the same, but that is how you describe it when you're talking about it. Let's get rid of all this stuff. Maybe. There we go. All right. Yes. So we write it as F sharp, G flat. A note that is neither sharp nor flat is natural and is identified by a natural sign. Yes. Okay. So we have another sign. We have our flat sign. We have our sharp sign. And if it's neither, then we have our natural sign, which is kind of this box with two lines coming out of it. Most often, the natural signs is used to cancel out a previous sharp or flat. So C natural tells you that C is no longer sharp or flat because it is restored to its usual modified state. So natural tells you that C is no longer sharp or flat. That's an important thing to remember about our natural friend here. So here we just have an example of what I've been talking about before. So good here Accidentals are written before the note and positioned on the same line space. So here we have our F, and our sharp is on the same space, and it is before. Same thing with all of these. Here's our natural sign, how it appears on the staff. And these are all no. This, see here, it appears after. Here it appears before, but it's all the way up there. What's it doing up there? It should be down on the line. So that's also a no. And this is both. So accidentals position too low or high. It's also possible, moving on from this, to raise a note by 2 semitones using a double sharp or a double flat. So we're really getting into some more intricate things here, but these are our basic accidentals. Then we have our more advanced ones, which is double sharp, which is usually written as this kind of X shape. I'll write it down here. Kind of an X shape, that's our double sharp. So we don't write sharp, sharp, we write that. Double flat, well, there's nothing special for that. And we just write 2 of our flats, and we get double flat. And this is double sharp. And what these do is it will raise a note, or raise a note by 2 semitones, or lower a note by 2 semitones. So let's start with our C. We make C flat. What is that going to be? Let's look at our mess up here. C flat, well, there's no black note here, so it's going to be a B. Okay, that's great. C flat is a B. But, okay, what about C double flat? So we know that C1 flat is a B. So what happens if we flatten that again? C flat's a B. B flattened gives us a B flat. So these are enharmonically equivalent. We'll do a lot of work with enharmonic equivalence and getting familiar with that. Likewise, if I'm on C double sharp, well, we know that C sharp is just a C sharp. What if we sharpen that again? Well, a semitone above C sharp, we're going to get a D. So C sharp, C double sharp is our D. Here we just get a little diagram. So we start with our D. This is a D. Put 1 sharp. Okay, we get a D sharp. We put 2 sharps, we get a D double sharp. So we're sharpening the D sharp again, and that gets us an E, which is also equal to a D double sharp. Natural sign, so D natural, these are both equal. Regular D and D natural, they're the same. This is just letting you know that there's nothing, there's nor sharp nor flat. Here we have our D flat, our single flat. Here we have our D double flat, which you go 1 more flat than D flat. I'm going to go down a semitone to C. So C enharmonically equivalent with D double flat. Pitch 2 semitones lower than our D. So that's going to be it for today. If you have any questions, some big information dump here to begin with. Let me know in the comments below. Other than that, that will be the end of today's lecture. And we'll continue on next week with rhythmic duration and notation of rhythm. And hopefully we can get to the end of this chapter and move on to chapter 1. I don't have any practice for this, I suppose. Well, actually, if you go to page 39 in your book, you can do, I'm not sure why it's not showing up here, but question 1, do question 1. This is identifying note names with the different clefs. And yes, we can do this too. I write the note that is enharmonically equivalent. So let's just go, yeah, that I think that's enough to do for this week. So enharmonic equivalence and the identifying the notes. So identify notes. I'm sure you'll understand that. And I will go over the answers at the beginning of the next lecture. So I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you next time.